Well, strict order in the mountains now, as the riders reach stage 15 of the Tour de France.
The second week of the Tour de France. It's been fun. Fast.
And Poisson's caught them. Look at this. A springboard to victory. Unbelievable ride. Pascal Poisson has jumped from the back to the front and into the lead.
And at times, furious. Hello again. Well, we've a busy night ahead. A mountain time trial, the centrepiece of our programme. The Tour could be won and lost today. The first week of the Tour this year was good. Last week was even better. The Irish win a stage, not Roach or Kelly, but Kelly's teammate, Martin Early.
Martin Early's got it. As Martin Early comes home, this is a great victory. This is the land of the Irish because Sean Kelly took his yellow jersey here. Sean Kelly won his last stage here in the Tour de France. Martin Early wins for Ireland here in Bow.
Robert Miller has a marvellous day, tracking the champion Delgado at the finish and then jumping him to win.
The Delgado goes for the gears, he slips it up one. Miller comes a long way round on his shoulder. Robert Miller is going to go, and Miller's got it. Robert Miller is going to win the stage. He's chosen his spot on schedule. Delgado has nothing left in those legs. Robert Miller has died twice. He's come back and he's won the stage on top of the mountain. Absolutely wonderful for Robert Miller and richly deserved as well. And it looks to me as though Greg has cracked. Greg has looked over for help here. The 5 seconds is going, so is the yellow jersey. There's definitely 5 seconds in this now. Greg LeMond is losing the yellow jersey as he comes to the top of the climb. This has been a most remarkable day in the Tour de France. Greg LeMond has cracked. into the headwind. Oh, he's gone down. Rudy Dorland has missed the bend, grabs his bike, and he'll watch the race go by. Oh, dear me, how sad for Rudy Dorland, and I'm not surprised the poor man's crying. Dorland had this race sewed up.
The Tour bites back with no respect for the big names. Valerio Tiboldi stays out of trouble though and finishes more than 21 minutes ahead of the pack. Frenchman Vincent Barteau produces the fireworks on Bastille Day.
Vincent Barteau then wins the France today, and he loves every moment of it now.
Glorious pictures and music. Another busy week behind us. So much of the hard work done, but there's a good deal more to do yet. And we've said it so many times. The Tour really only starts once the riders are in the Alps, and that's today. And we'll be getting our first pictures in of today's mountain time trial from France very shortly. But I wonder how many times you've marvelled at the work of our colleagues in the written press, especially some of those photographs in the cycling magazines. Well, now's your chance to find out how it's done in the company of Graham Watson from Winning magazine.
They say that every picture is worth 1,000 words. And when you purchase a cycling magazine, one thing that strikes you immediately is the quality of the images of the Tour de France. Cyclists in action and the stark, beautiful panorama are a photographer's delight to portray, but to convey the feeling and mood of the Tour is not easy. Graham Watson is a specialist in cycling photography, and this is his 13th Tour de France. His daily life is being part of the peloton on a motorbike. But why a motorbike?
Because it's the most mobile way of seeing a cycle race. It's the best way to see a cycle race. You have to be very quick going past cyclists, you have to be very quick going in there, and certainly getting out of the cyclists. And a motorbike is the only way to do it. It's a very narrow thing, it's almost the same length as a cycle, and it's very easy to go past. It's very easy to get in there, get out, see as much as you want. It's not possible to do the same job in a car. Most people think it's a very glamorous job, but it's not. In fact, most times it's very, very uncomfortable, especially if you happen to follow a section of the pavé of this year's Tour de France. There are times at 40 miles an hour when you simply cannot sit on the motorbike because you're being judged and thrown around so much. It's also credit to the driver that you can do this. He is your second set of eyes. He is the man who sees you safely through each day, and who also gets you into these situations and out of them, hopefully. And it's to him I rely on most of all.
When not behind his pilot, Watson has usually spotted a moody position amongst the flora and fauna that abounds in France. And the result, often beautiful pictures like this in the French-language paper Tour Hebdo. On the finish line, Watson is among the privileged few allowed to capture the joy and the agony of being either a winner or a loser. When the urgency of the day is over, it's off to the podium for the jersey presentations, where things are a little more controlled. So, what does Graham look for that makes his photographs accepted by everyone as among the best images in the world?
It depends very much on the situation which I find myself in. Cycle racing is a very, very attractive sport. And it's also a sport which is ever-changing. Its space is changing, the scenery is changing, its environment is changing. What I look for is to pick out the best way to illustrate that particular side of the sport. It can be a cyclist winning a race with his arms in the air looking very, very happy. It can also be a cyclist who just fallen on the ground and has cut himself and is very, very unhappy. Or a cyclist who is having a very difficult time climbing a 8,000-foot high mountain. There's a sad side to cycling, there's a very happy side to it, and it's very enjoyable being able to take both sides of it.
To get the best shots, Graham's armoury consists of 3 cameras and 10 lenses. The lenses vary from a 16mm fisheye to a 300mm telephoto. The situation dictates the type of lens used.
These are the tools of my trade. This is the 16mm fisheye lens, which I use especially for the shot of the Eiffel Tower on the last day of the race. It's the only lens that you could possibly use because the Eiffel Tower is so tall. And obviously the bunch of cyclists is very, very long. There's no other lens which could bring that picture out as this one does. This is a 300mm lens, which is extremely heavy, and which at the end of the day can make a very sore shoulder that's worth carrying with you because situations do arise. For instance, if you happen to see a large sunflower field where the cyclist is going to come through, the ability of this lens, the attraction of this lens is to make that picture that much more powerful, to give the effect that they are actually riding through a field of sunflowers, which of course they're not. It's a very, very strong lens that's well worth carrying with you all day long. I'd use this lens, the 180mm, for finish line shots only, at no other time at all. There's this lens I use on the motorbike, which is the one I use for head-on shots when I travel about 8 metres in front of the race. Also, this lens I use for side-on shots, or when I'm very, very close on a mountain climb, when I'm about 5 feet in front of the cyclists. And there's the other lens, a 24mm, which I use for more, shall we say, normal wide-angle shot.
So, next time you buy a cycling magazine and see Graham's name, you'll know that he, like the riders, is a true professional who searches daily for the ultimate result.
Well, now you know the riders steal the limelight naturally, but there are other stars on the Tour de France as well. Let's remind ourselves of the overall classification, shall we? Not much has changed over the past couple of days. Laurent Fignon is still in yellow, but that's a very slender lead, just 7 seconds to take into the Alps. Second is Greg LeMond, third Charlie Motte, fourth Delgado, the defending champion, who was fined 10 seconds on Friday for taking food outside a designated area. Fifth, Andy Hampston, and sixth, La Gioretta. Robert Miller is a good outside bet, perhaps. He's 8th. And Sean Kelly, who's been wonderfully consistent on this tour, is 13th. So who's going to win? Well, we've been amongst the riders trying to find out.
I think Delgado. Delgado's going to make a brilliant comeback. Delgado. Who do you think's going to win the Tour de France this year? Normally, maybe Delgado, but LeMond is also strongest. Pedro Delgado.
Don't know. Don't care. I'm just going to do my bit and see what happens.
Peut-être avec un petit avantage pour Delgado.
I think Delgado is a big favourite because, you know, he took so much time and he did such a good ride in the Pyrenees. And I think in the time that he will take a fair bit of time, maybe a minute and a half from Fignon. I think LeMond is, you know, a guy who's capable of doing a very good ride.
I'd say Delgado and myself.
Bon, on approche la dernière semaine du Tour de France. Qui est ton favori pour gagner le Tour?
Delgado.
Oh, I hope Greg LeMond.
Delgado.
Delgado. Does nobody fancy Laurent Fignon?
Moi, allez.
Well, he's nothing if not modest, Fignon. Actually, I'm delighted to see him that confident. My 50 pence is riding with him. But what about the real experts? Paul Sherwin and Phil Liggett, who are out in the sunshine at the finish of today's 39-kilometre mountain time trial, the severest test yet for the riders, but not these two.
Looking out across the Alps this morning, Richard, I know now why I'm glad you're in the studio and I'm out here on the Tour de France. It is, of course, the most crucial time trial in the race, and it's the start of a long period in the Alps this year. We're standing here at Orcières-Merlette at 6,000 feet. The riders, of course, making their effort beginning down at Gap, where it stands just 2,500 feet above sea level. The crowds were out all through the night finding the best vantage positions, and among them a lot of British supporters hoping, of course, for a victory by Robert Miller. But from 7 o'clock this morning the roads were closed just for the riders to practice. One of the first men out on the roads, Pedro Delgado, and he came up the mountain training all the way to the top. He'll know now that the last 8 kilometres of the course today is the most difficult. Delgado won at Villard-de-Lans last year. That was a mountain test as well, and of course he went on to win the Tour de France. Now he has to come back from 4th place and a gap of 3 minutes 3 seconds over the race leader. Well, not to be outdone, Laurent Fignon was also training on the course this morning, thinking probably of the 7 seconds he leads Greg LeMond overall. That is now no time at all on roads like this. Now, if you want to see what it's like for a rider starting a time trial, this is the view from the start house each rider will get. The countdown from 15 seconds through to the start. And I think it's true to say today, the only downhill section on this course is the 6 feet out of the start cabin. Now, Paul, between us, I know we hope Robert Miller can pull it off, but who do you think really can win the stage today?
Well, really, I think it's going to be down to Delgado. He's going to try and pull back as much time as he can on Laurent Fignon and Greg LeMond.
Now, Fignon and LeMond are still unknown quantities. I'm not so sure they've got the strength, are you?
Well, Greg might be able to pull out a good time trial today because he's come back a long way from his injuries. Fignon, his time trialling ability at the moment is very suspect. One day he does a good ride and the next day he doesn't.
And what about surprises from the depth of the field? Because that's where this Tour de France seems to find all of its surprises this year.
Well, 2 good surprises, I think, could be the Dutchman Jan Tunnis and Rooks. They rode superbly in the Pyrenees, but they weren't under the same mental pressure as the 3 leaders.
One thing is for certain, Richard, the riders who believe they can win this Tour de France know that today they must really show they are building the foundations of success, and it's going to be a great day out.
Phil, thank you. Well, as we speak, we're getting our first pictures in from today's stage, and we'll be taking a look at them after this break. Stay there. Welcome back. Our action tonight, a mountain time trial in the Alps. Our studio guest, Malcolm Elliott, who's ridden the Tour in the past 2 years, but not this time round. We've been through the reasons why not previously, Malcolm. Welcome back. Time trial. What's going through a rider's mind as he confronts a time trial in the mountains?
Well, it depends actually on which rider we're talking about, I would say. If you're someone who's up there in, say, the top 10 or 20 vying for a place in Paris, then the mental pressure on them on the morning of a race like this is immense, I think, because you've got an hour or an hour and a quarter all by yourself. Nobody to blame but yourself if you fail to come up with the goods. I think you, to an extent, you put that pressure on yourself anyway, and you've just got an hour of sheer hell.
Just surprised me, perhaps it might do 1 or 2 other people, to see the riders out on the climb today. Delgado and Fignon rode the stage, leisurely of course. Don't know what to expect, well, but does that take anything out of you?
I don't think so, no. They, probably the riders lower down the field wouldn't be bothered about doing that, but for somebody like Delgado, he wants to see it, probably to get a warm-up for himself, and to see whereabouts the course gets hard, where he can make up time, where it's perhaps a bit easier. Things like that. A ride over the course really is a big help.
Choice of bike and equipment, of course, crucial at the best of times, but I imagine as well for this one, that's the case. Sure. Fignon had the time trial wheel, Delgado didn't.
That's right. Some riders, that will be one of the main things that the riders will have been on the course for, to decide which wheel to opt for.
And your fancy? Delgado's obviously got to start taking time out of the top 4.
I think Delgado now it's the start of his charge in the Alps, and I think he's got to start making it. Today is the day. There's no reason to hold back at all.
You've been pretty consistent. You didn't write him off when some of us did after that disastrous first day or 2. Is he still your tip for the first place in Paris?
Well, if we go back to Luxembourg and consider the time which he lost there, it would be a much different picture now, or even before the time trial, it would be a much different picture. So I think it is far from written off.
Malcolm, thanks for the time being. We'll talk more during the course of the programme. But let's have our first look at some pictures from France then, shall we? At the stage today, 15, it's a mountain time trial, as we've mentioned, 39 kilometres, 25 miles of tough cycling. There are 2 first category climbs en route. No assistance from team colleagues for the riders. Each man goes against the clock. The riders, the leading riders in the GC, go last. Here's Paul and Phil.
And we're looking here now at Miguel Indurain, the man who was leading the King of the Mountains and who won the first stage in the Pyrenees, and of course a member of Pedro Delgado's team. And Indurain is the leader at 33.7 kilometres, and it looks like he'll be the first man to beat the time of the day, set a long while ago by Laurent Biondy. His finish time at 1:12.19. We're looking here at the situation at only 10 kilometres, and look at this. Rooks has set the best time, 22 minutes and 2 seconds. Indurain, who we're looking at here, was in second place there. Pedro Delgado was only in third. Sean Kelly up in fourth. So a good start by Sean Kelly. We move further along onto the first big climb of the Col de Mans. And Laurent Fignon, 53 seconds down here on the best time of the day set so far. Greg LeMond is 40 seconds down. The best time at this point looks to be Delgado, 22 minutes and 13 seconds. So Delgado, Paul, is on his way back.
He really is doing a storming ride, and he started very quickly up this climb because it's on the 2 climbs that Delgado can make up the time. The flat section in between these 2 cols, he won't gain very much over Fignon and LeMond. What he's done, he started very quickly. He'll get in between the 2 mountains and he'll try and bridge another minute or so on this final climb. But it's incredible to notice that the LeMond at the moment is doing a better time than Laurent Fignon. So if Delgado doesn't take 3 minutes out of the other riders, Greg LeMond could be back in the yellow jersey tonight.
Well, the interesting thing is that Laurent Fignon is again not seemingly producing his time trialling ability that won him the Tours de France in 83 and 84. He's never really delivered the goods in a time trial since then, although he has showed us that he's been in amongst the action for this last 2 weeks when it comes to the rest of the road races. Well, Indurain here now is going to reshape the leaderboard. He's coming up towards the summit of Orcières-Merlette. This is the town of Merlette now. And Indurain is going to start what the Spaniards hope will be a day of festival here. We're going back down the road to Sean Kelly, who again continues to surprise everybody in this year's Tour de France. He was penalised 10 seconds a couple of days ago for giving a helping hand to a rival competitor. That took him away from 11th place overall to 13th, which is where he was this morning. And Kelly has been on the leaderboard all the way up the mountain. He's second best at the halfway mark behind Indurain, but there really was not very much in it. And if Kelly continues his progress, he might well challenge. We're looking down now at the 21-kilometre check. Rooks goes through there as best time. He's still to finish, of course. Indurain was 2 seconds behind him. He's almost finished now. Sean Kelly, 26 seconds back at that point at 21 kilometres. But Kelly at last seems to have mastered the art of riding alone.
Well, he has. He's come back to the form he had a few years ago. And Sean really himself puts it down to the fact that he hasn't been riding too many races. As we go back into the finishing straight, this is Indurain coming round the corner, 1:10.53. It looks like he's going to slash an awful lot off that time of Laurent Biondy.
So watching Indurain finish, it's going to be about a minute if he can put in a good finish here. But Indurain has faced a picture of agony. This has been a vicious climb today. And it is warm and very, very warm indeed as they climb up to 6,000 feet. Indurain turns up towards the home straight now. He can see the line. He'll be inside a minute of Biondy's time, so he's not going to be terribly outstanding. It'll be the best time, though. Indurain goes top of the board, 1:11.25 for Miguel Indurain. So the Reynolds team, who lead this race on the team, of course, after that marvellous day in the Pyrenees. And now we're going down to see how Sean Kelly is. This is probably the steepest part of the climb. The road just drops away to the left of Kelly. And it is where all the spectators have gathered. They've been here all night celebrating. There's been bonfires, there's been barbecues going right through the night. We came up this mountain at midnight last night. We were in a traffic jam that we compared with Regent Street. Looking at the time checks then, 33 kilometres here. Rooks still heading the charge with 54 minutes. 25 seconds. Indurain is home now with the best time, with 3 seconds down on Rooks there, so there's not a lot in that.
Well, there isn't a lot in it as Kelly goes under the red kite there. He's got a kilometre to do and 2 minutes to do it in. It's going to be very difficult for him as we slip back to Eric Carrington, who's been caught by Miguel Indurain, and he's coming through with a time well outside what we'd have expected.
The champion of France, who is in the leading group, don't forget, in the Pyrenees. He's having his best tour for years. Former winner of the Tour of Spain, wearing the colours today as the French champion, which he has been for the last 2 years. He's coming up with a rather disastrous time for him. It's 32nd at the moment, but there are, of course, a lot of riders still to finish. We're going back down to Sean. I noticed there the black and white flags of the Bretons flying. They've made a long journey down here into the Alps today. At least Sean Kelly is making this green jersey his, and providing he doesn't have any accidents, and he must always think of that because he's had 1 or 2 in the Tour, he'll win that competition. The situation at 39 kilometres, the finish line, Indurain the best time, 1 hour, 11 minutes and 25 seconds. Ahead of Biondi, Reschelberger is third. Pascal Richard, the Swiss champion, is at the moment in 4th place, but we'll see 1 or 2 changes yet.
Kelly's got about 600 metres to go there, Phil, and he's got about a minute to cover it in to try and get inside Indurain's time. I don't think he will do it because it's very hard to finish. The last 500 metres of a mountain top time trial is really incredibly hard, and Kelly's trying, he's pulling everything out there, trying to get inside that time. It's going to be touch and go when he gets onto the line. He might put himself up into 2nd place.
Well, Kelly certainly is going to keep himself in amongst the challenges of the Tour de France with this sort of a performance, as we now swing back down the road to Pascal Simon. 7 minutes, 7 seconds behind. I really feel his finest claim to fame was in the Tour de France a few years ago when he wore the yellow jersey, and he went out of the Tour while still the leader when he broke his collarbone. But we'll go back up to Sean Kelly. Here he comes up towards the line. He's pushing Indurain all the way. He's not going to beat it, but it's a good time because remember, Indurain is better than Laurent Fignon after 10 kilometres. So Sean Kelly is going to keep himself up amongst the leaders in the Tour de France. Sean didn't expect to win this time trial. He wanted not to concede too much time, and I think he's doing that today. But of course, all the top men still to follow. His 12 riders start behind Sean's 2nd best time at the moment, 1 hour, 11 minutes, 48 seconds. A great ride by Sean Kelly, that, and that's going to keep him in amongst the leaders in this Tour de France. It is Pascal Simon. He started 3 minutes behind Sean Kelly. He's conceding time now. This is the situation of the riders who finished. Indurain 1:11.25. Kelly concedes just 23 seconds at the line. And the crowd are looking a little bit subdued for the moment until they work out who this is. It's Pascal Simon. As we go down the mountain to see Stephen Rux, his time is going to be the most interesting to date. He was leading at the checks on the way up, and Rux is the rider who's definitely coming back into this year's Tour de France. He finished 2nd last year and won the King of the Mountains, and I think he could well be challenging again in the Alps.
Well, he's not got very far to go, and it's going to be touch and go on the line here because at the last check at 33 kilometres, Rux was just 3 seconds in front of Miguel Indurain with this big vicious climb that finishes the race to come. So it's all going to be decided between Rux and Indurain anyway on this last climb here as they come to the hardest parts.
It looked like he slipped his gear there, Paul. That's going to ruin his rhythm. He's got out of the saddle to try and find it again. Very, very difficult indeed. Simon is under the kilometre to go kite. He's up ahead of Stephen Rux, of course. But I'm quite sure that Simon can't be very far ahead of Rux. Maybe a minute, but not much more. Simon making his way up towards the ski chalets of Orcières-Merlette. It's the most pleasant place to be today. The crowd are enjoying themselves. There's a whole village up here. It's not just the odd chalet. There's shops and everything. There's even a supermarket. Everybody can come up here and really get away from the world. Pascal just concentrating. He's not actually riding like a man who's going to feature in the climbs in this Tour de France. He's starting this ride today in 12th place overall. 1 place ahead of Sean Kelly, but Kelly is going to reclaim at least that today. And if Kelly can keep up with the time he's already finished with, I think Kelly could be in the top 10 by the end of the stage today. The time of Indurain is not going to be matched by Simon because it's almost there now, and he's still a fair way to go. The Tour de France has only finished at Orcières 3 times before. They've always provided a turning point in the race as well, and it could well be so today. Now, these are the interesting checks at 21 kilometres on the Moulin du Cerf. Pedro Delgado, again the best time, 36 minutes, 46 seconds. Look at the time gaps. He's improved a minute 24 on Charlie Motte, 20 seconds on Greg LeMond, and 42 on Laurent Fignon.
Well, that's quite incredible, Phil, but that's the part of the course where I said that Delgado wouldn't be able to gain any time over these two riders because that's the flat part in between the two cols. It's amazing to notice that Greg LeMond has actually come back to 20 seconds. Fignon's pegged back a little bit of time as well, but that's the terrain that suits these two riders. We'll come back to Simon. His time's going to be well outside that of Indurain, 1:12.16 at the moment, and he's still got a fair way to go.
Well, there's a lot of riders behind Pascal Simon also fighting for their existence in the Tour de France now. There seems to be no one capable of stopping the relentless fight back of Pedro Delgado. 198th in Luxembourg, and now 4th when he started this morning, and his sights firmly fixed on the 3 men in front of him. This is Stephen Rooks. Not too far down the slope, behind Pascal Simon. The crowd seems to be at the thickest here. The big problem the crowd have had on this narrow climb is finding somewhere to park the cars and stay for the night, because there's nowhere off the road except a long way down to the valley below, so the cars have all had to come up to the top, and the spectators have had to walk back down the mountain to stand. But that's the great thing about the Tour de France. It's a sport which uses the natural terrain of Europe, and that's what makes it so exciting. And here comes Stephen Rooks now, and he's very close to Indurain's time. This is going to be tight, and Rooks could well just shave it here. Indurain is in with 11.25. Stephen Rooks might do it. He's pushing every inch of the way, and he's coming up to the line. This is the best time. 1:10.42 for Stephen Rooks. The former King of the Mountains is back. He knows it's good. He waves to the Dutch people. 1:10.42 for Stephen Rooks' best time. Well, that was what he wanted to do. He's now concentrated, as he's always said, all of his season on this year's Tour de France. He really hasn't dominated anything at all. He's trained to do well in the Tour. He's trained especially to do well in the Alps, and he's made a jolly good start. Look at this. Rooks on top now, 1:10.42. Indurain 43 seconds back. Kelly drops back to 1 minute and 6 seconds. And here he is, Robert Miller, lower down the slope. Stephen Rooks, who's finished. Now, it'll be interesting. We've had no time gaps on Robert at all, which would indicate that he is not up amongst the leaders. And I think you told me earlier, Paul, you chatted to him, and he was saying that he was going to try only for the climbs.
Well, Robert, there are two climbs counting for the King of the Mountains classification in this time trial today. The time is taken from the rider who goes up that part of the course the quickest, from the bottom of the climb to the top. And Robert said he was going to concentrate on that particular competition because his main goal in this Tour de France, he said to me, was to win that King of the Mountains jersey. That seems to be what he's done, because he's been trying to ride up these climbs, and all the intermediary times he hasn't shown at all.
There are points, of course, for the best times up the actual climbs themselves out on the course, and this is the rider that Miller is contesting the King of the Mountains title with, Gerd Turnisse. He wears the polka dot jersey as leader at the moment, and Miller his closest challenger in that.
Well, it's quite funny, Phil, because on the road in this time trial, Miller is just in front of Turnisse, and it must be like a carrot to Turnisse, because he's got that jersey at the moment by about 25 points from Robert Miller, and he'll be trying to do the same thing. But Turnisse also will be trying to do a ride for the overall position, because after the incident that happened to him last year with that doping scandal, he wants to come back and prove to everybody that he's a clean man, and that he really deserved his place in the top 5 last year.
They call him Geronimo because of his flowing hair. He normally wears a headband as well to make everybody feel he is a member of the Apache Nation. But today he shed that, and he is riding with a lot of urgency here. The clock doesn't really lead us to much, showing Rooks' time at the minute, but Turnisse is heading up towards the top of the mountain. Still a couple of kilometres for him towards the summit as he gets towards the steepest part of the finishing climb. He certainly looks, Paul, as though he's going quickly.
He looks very good, Turniser. He always looks good on the climbs. I've been really impressed by Rooks and Turniser over the last few climbs in the Pyrenees. It's amazing the ease that they seem to ride away from everybody on them. I'd like to see what Turniser's time's going to be at the top of this climb, because he and Rooks tend to be very, very close together, and it will be interesting to see what time he's going to do when he gets to the top.
Well, if rumours are correct, it is rather sad that these two riders, Turniser and Rooks, will be going their separate ways next year, because they're talking of joining different teams. But they've been such close friends and such great helpers to one another. I think that they may not profit by such a move. Looking down then, 33.4 kilometres. Rooks was the best time here. He's now in with the best time. Indurain was second at 3 seconds. Lagereta was third, Kelly fourth, and Raul Alcala comes onto the scene, the Mexican, with the fifth best time at 33 kilometres. That's on the way out of Orcières, by the way, and that's the village just below the finish line here at Merlette. This is Robert Miller, making his way up to the last kilometre. His time outside of Rooks now, it looks like his time is going to be around 1 hour and 14 minutes, and that is certainly not going to be good enough today to put him anywhere like on the leaderboard. So it does seem to indicate, Paul, that Miller has decided he's not in contention for the overall placings in this year's Tour. Well, in fact, here's Turniser now. He's coming up to the red kite as well, and he won't be very, very far behind Robert Miller. In fact, he's probably got Miller in his sights. It's quite an interesting situation to have the King of the Mountains catching the challenger. Yes, and it's a shame that it's Robert Miller that he's catching, because I think the gap between them is probably about 400 metres. Turniser looks to be going visibly quicker than Miller. He's got a good rhythm, and he's riding the mountain extremely well. He's going to come in with a good time, is Gerd Turniser, despite that nasty crash he had a couple of days ago on the flat roads towards Marseille when he banged his head on the road. He seems to have had no ill effects at all. There's the Breton flag on the right, waving at a Dutchman. When you think that just days before the Tour de France began, way back in Luxembourg, Turniser was a doubtful starter because he broke his ribs in the Tour of Switzerland when he hit a concrete post in the middle of the road, and yet he's come right into his own in the third week of the Tour de France.
There's Rob Miller, 1 hour 14. He's well outside the time of Rooks, and he'll find that that's slipped him down quite a few places in the overall classification.
Well, there's no doubt then Robert Miller has decided he's not the man to win the Tour de France. He's named his target, the King of the Mountains. That'll give us lots of enjoyment during the next few days in the Alps, because we can expect Miller to be on the attack again. He's taken the pressure off himself with this ride, so he doesn't have to worry about the individual competition. He finishes here 23rd in 1:14.36. As we swing back to the man who's wearing the jersey that Miller wants, the polka dot, as leader of the King of the Mountains, and look at the difference. Turniser coming up here with a time that's going to be just outside 1 hour and 12 minutes. No, inside, fourth best, 1:11.54. Turniser is on the leaderboard in fourth place, and all the stars are still to come behind him.
Well, we told you it was tough, and there's one of the best climbers on this year's Tour, hurting after that stage. As Phil said, when we come back from this break, we'll be looking at the stars. Hello again. We've been watching action from today's individual time trial at the Race of Truth, they call this one. It's each rider on his own over 39 kilometres, 25 miles against the clock. Malcolm Elliott, an impressive time from Stephen Rooks, 1 hour, 10 minutes and 42 seconds.
Yes, he appears to be coming up to his best form now. Up until the Tour de France, I think he's had a fairly forgettable season. So perhaps now and in the Alps to come, the next, apart from tomorrow, the rest day, the next 4 days are very, very difficult in the Alps, which I think Rooks enjoys the most.
The chance that'll put him on the leaderboard tonight, that's what he aims for.
Well, he's sitting down in 12th position at the moment, and the times that the riders in front of him, they are fairly close, so he's got to do one good ride and he can move up quite a few places.
One or two interesting rides today behind him. Pedro Delgado suggesting that he wants a stage win.
Well, Delgado, everybody's looking at Delgado really as the favourite for today, and so far his intermediate times show that, and who knows.
OK, let's go back to France then, shall we? Paul Sherwin and Phil Liggett are on top of the mountain today, where the riders are finishing. Phil.
Lower down the slope now, this is Marina Lajaretta, who's heading up towards the finish. He started today in 6th place overall, 6 minutes and 3 seconds behind Laurent Fignon. Although they're saying here 5 minutes and 51 seconds. As he makes his way up towards the summit, he's going to be closing on that. Bunyo, the rider in front of him, has finished with a comparatively slow time. He will lose his place today, certainly, from 7th. As we move here and see Raul Alcala making his finish at the top. And Alcala was thought to be putting in a serious attempt at winning this year's Tour de France. He tries at every opportunity. He was the stage winner in Belgium at Francorchamps on the motor racing circuit at Spa there. And he finishes 4th now, so he has got a good ride there. He's dislodged Gert Turneyser. And now Lajaretta, not far behind. Alcala is in amongst the chalets as the crowds cheer him on. There's going to be quite a big change in the overall classification tonight. It's going to be completely reshuffled, because I think we're going to find Stephen Rooks has come up from 12th overall, possibly to a place in the top 6. And Turneyser too will have closed dramatically. He should be in the top 8. That is at the moment. We still have to finish, apart from Lajaretta, Hampsten, Delgado, Motte, Le Monde and Laurent Fignon. The Spanish flags now flying for one of their stars, with the big cheers being reserved for the man that everybody's come to love on the Tour de France, Pedro Delgado. And he's still about 4 kilometers down the mountain. A little bit of cloud sweeping in across the top of Orcières-Merlette, putting a chill wind onto what has been a most pleasant day. Lajaretta just tries to squeeze out the last ounces of energy. He's obviously going better in this year's Tour de France than he's done for a long time.
Yes, he has. It's amazing to be able to ride as many races as he does and still keep the morale to fight there. And he's still doing that. He's fighting all the way up this last 400-500 metres of the climb. As we go back to 33 kilometres in Orcières, Delgado has got 10 seconds lead on Craig LeMond, 1:30 on 1:32 on Motte, and there was no sign there of Laurent Fignon. Lajaretta coming into the last 400 metres with a time of 1:10.42. He's done an incredible ride, Lajaretta.
Lajaretta certainly has. He's going to cross the line. He'll be just outside 1:11 because he's got to make the right-handed flick into the home straight, which is where he's moving to now. But he's going to go well up amongst the leaders. It'll be only just outside 1 hour 11 minutes. That should be good enough to put him into second place if he can provide the finish. And it looks as though he can. Lajaretta goes second. That's a surprise. 1:11.06. So with Lajaretta in with a time of 1 hour 11 minutes and 6 seconds, we move down now to Andy Hampsten. And Andy Hampsten knows he must produce a ride here today if he is to challenge at all. And look at this, Hampsten 2 minutes 8 seconds behind Delgado at the 33 kilometres point. Well, Andy Hampsten is losing now, finally, all the time. He was in front of Delgado on this Tour de France. Delgado is now beginning to chip off all the men who are ahead of him. Well, here he is. This is the man that everybody thought they had to beat, and they were right. Pedro Delgado has ridden himself over every lump on the route of this year's Tour de France, right back into the picture. And he probably doesn't know about the great ride that Le Monde is doing. But Le Monde has come right back in, could pull off the surprise yet. It's going to be a cracking finish, this, because Greg LeMond could find himself back in the yellow jersey tonight. But Pedro Delgado, from 198 to probably second or third in the Tour de France. He's over 2 minutes 8 seconds ahead now of Andy Hampsten, who again, for the second year in succession, is not enjoying his visit to the Alps. He collapsed here totally last year, slumped away to finish 16th in the race, and it looks, Paul, as though he's about to do it again.
It looks like he's suffering a great deal here, Andy. He's been trying to find the right gear to choose. He's in and out of the saddle, can't get his rhythm, and this really is the hardest part of the course. Going back to Delgado, look how much smoother Delgado is. He's rocking to a rhythm there just to keep his legs going around nice and evenly, and it won't be very long before we go around one of these long straights, and Delgado's probably going to get Andy Hampson in his sights.
So the Spaniards call him Perico, that's his nickname, and that's what they'll be shouting in his ears as he comes all the way up the mountain, because he's climbed back into the leaderboard without a shadow of a doubt with this performance. Goodness knows what he's holding in store now for the rest of the race when he goes off over the big climbs in the next few days. One thing's for sure, he'll enjoy his rest day tomorrow more than he did his flight across northern France after the first couple of days 2 weeks ago, because then he was looking back at a deficit on Acacio da Silva of almost 10 minutes. Under the red kite here for Andy Hampson, and already he's outside the time of Stephen Rooks for the full distance.
Well, Hampson's going to come up in a time of something like 1 hour and 14 as we go back there to Delgado. He really can't be very far at all behind Andy Hampson. He's out of the saddle here, forcing himself onwards. He must be getting time checks at a regular time from his team manager, because the time checks are being given out over the course to the team managers. And there's Delgado with using a disc wheel. One or two of the riders have used disc wheels, which is surprising on a mountain top finish like this, but the one Delgado's using, although it is a solid disc wheel, it's very, very light and doesn't hamper him on the climb.
Well, Delgado started 3 minutes behind Andy Hampson. At the moment, as he comes up to the red kite, he is riding approximately 45 seconds behind him. He's closed all that gap. And he's still keeping his rhythm. He's still full of fight as the crowd do everything except pedal the bike for him. They shout, they cheer, they push on their hero, because I think everybody loves the man who comes from the back, and you can't come further back than last man in the Tour de France a couple of weeks ago. He's climbed right back into this race, and for everybody now, he must be seen as the favourite for Paris in a week's time. There's Andy heading up towards the finish. That can't come soon enough for him now. It's about 500 metres to go. He promises so much, Andy, but when he comes to the mountains, he just hasn't found the strength to deliver it. As the Breton flag waves at a Spanish rider. It's a great pursuit, and I don't think that Andy is going to be caught by Pedro. But Pedro has done all he need do today. If he doesn't take the yellow jersey, he's certainly reduced the time deficit to be quite negligible. Hampson swings around, he'll come up towards the finish, then he'll have a short turn after this one, but look at the time. 1 hour and 13 minutes, he's conceded 3 minutes now to Stephen Rooks. And it'll be 4 minutes by the time he gets to the line. And Rooks today was in fact only 2 minutes behind Hampson. And remember, Hampson was in 5th place overall, so that's the quality of Rooks. Rooks also now could find himself in the top 4 or 5 men tonight and right back in this race. The whole leaderboard being thrown upside down by this one ride. 12th place for Andy Hampson. Now we're watching the man complete the last half mile or so inside that, the last quarter mile to the checkered flag on this first time trial, the only time trial of the year, of this year's Tour de France in the Alps. Last year at Villard-de-Lans, Pedro Delgado was winning there as well. But of course, we know that lower down the slope, Greg LeMond is closing fast. And if Greg puts in a finish that he's threatening to do, then we're going to have some finish today. This is Charlie Motte. While we leave Pedro Delgado for the moment, going up towards the finish, we've gone back down to Charlie Motte. He started 3 minutes back. We'll go back and see Pedro finish. He's coming up now. The time to beat is 1:10.42. He's lost a fair bit on Rooks over this last half of the ride. That's the quality of Stephen Rooks' performance. But Delgado is going to gain time, possibly over Fignon, maybe over LeMond. Time will tell. 1:11.31 for Delgado, only 4th fastest. He's gone back a little bit over the last couple of kilometres of the climb. This is Greg LeMond coming round the corner. Greg LeMond using those strange handlebars from the triathlete days, which he preferred so much when he won the time trial between Dinard and Rennes. And now Greg LeMond, as far as we know, is fighting back all the way. He was 10 seconds behind Delgado at Orcières, 4 kilometres down the mountain. If he has continued that return to catch up with Delgado, then he could well steal this race right on the line today. He looks like a man that's suffering a bit now.
Well, incredible choice by Greg there. He's used that special adaptation on the handlebars for this middle section of this time trial, where it's quite flat between the top of the two cols, and that's probably where, using those these new handlebars, that he's pulled back his time on Delgado, because he was 53 seconds down at the top of the first col, and then he was only 10 seconds down there. As we come up to the red flag, he's got a time of 1 hour 9, which in fact I think at the same time was ahead of Delgado's time. As we come up to the climb, it's going to be touch and go whether he's lost any time at all on Delgado.
Well, I think, Paul, in fact, the long wait there is either that Le Monde has passed Motte out of the sight of our cameras, or indeed Le Monde is catching Motte right on the line for 3 minutes. We're back now to the yellow jersey. Laurent Fignon is bringing this fantastic stage to a close here, because Fignon has never been up amongst the leaderboard all the way up the climb. He's almost certainly saying goodbye to his yellow jersey. As we watch Le Monde coming up to the finish, Charlie Motte it is. So he hasn't been caught by Le Monde. This is Charlie Motte coming round to the finish, and his time over 2 minutes slower than Stephen Rooks. And I think that Le Monde is only just behind Motte. So Charlie Motte comes home 2 minutes slower. The time to beat of Pedro Delgado was 1 hour 11 and 31. He's losing 2 minutes to Pedro Delgado, as he finishes 1:13.06 for only 12th place for Charlie Motte, and that, I think, will confirm that Delgado is going to move up over Motte in the overall classification, at least tonight. He may well go over the top of Laurent Fignon, although he does seem here to have refound his rhythm towards the end of this climb. It may be that Motte is going to move over Delgado, or Delgado over Motte rather, but Fignon is, I think we'll agree, Paul, he's never actually given us the feeling that he has found his old time trialling prowess.
He seems to have gained in certain areas, but his time trialling has been very suspect. He's done 1 or 2 good rides, but when the crunch has really been on, he hasn't been able to come up with it. But here we've got Greg a little bit further down the road. He's outside Stephen Rooks' time, but the important thing to notice is the time that Greg does in relation to the time that Pedro Delgado does. And of course today what is also important is the time that Laurent Fignon does, because there's only 7 seconds separates these two riders. Greg's coming into the final straight now. He's 1:11.14.15. The time's going on. Got to see if he's pulled back any time on Pedro Delgado.
Well, Injuran is still third, 1:11.25. Delgado 1:11.31. One thing's for sure, Delgado has not got much on Le Monde today. Le Monde is back in this Tour de France. We thought he might have lost a lot of time today, but he hasn't. He's come back. And this Tour is certainly not won or lost by Greg Le Monde or Pedro Delgado. 1:11.39 for 5th place. That is a marvellous ride by Greg Le Monde today. And now, if he can go well in the Alps, this could all go to Versailles in the final time trial. Greg Le Monde has come back into this race. He's going to take the yellow jersey on that performance, and Pedro Delgado has gained only 8 seconds on him on this climb. Fignon, last kilometre, and his time too is not going to be such a disaster. It does seem, Paul, that these riders will not concede to Pedro Delgado, will they?
Well, they won't give up at all. It's going to be an incredible next few days in the mountains, Phil. There's going to have to be some serious attacking done by Delgado, because he's still not pulled back any time on Greg Le Monde at all. 8 or 9 seconds today, that's all. As we go down to Laurent Fignon there, trying to keep hold of this yellow jersey. It looks as if Fignon is really suffering there. Greg went onto the red kite in just a time of 1 hour, 9 minutes and 10 seconds. I'd like to see where Laurent Fignon is in relation to that.
Well, it looks as though Paul Sherman was right about the surprise and where they would come from. It's the Dutchman. Stephen Rooks and Gert Teunissen are putting themselves in the top 6 or 8 men today with their performances on this mountain. And both of them love the Alps, which are still to come as the road race stages, of course, with some of the famous climbs in the Tour de France ahead of us. Laurent Fignon, he's riding now a little bit ragged. He's rolling around. He's not riding as composed as he might be. And the clock is counting away. Gone past the time almost of Stephen Rooks. It'll be gone in the next few pedal strokes. And then Pedro Delgado and Motte and Le Monde will be watching the clock with great interest to see if they are also going to take time away from Laurent Fignon today. One has felt all along that Fignon has been something of a pretender to this yellow jersey. He's always been put under pressure. He's dug deep and he's found the strength to recover from impossible situations. But when you're out there on your own, there's no teammates to help you. You've got to produce the effort all by yourself. And it does appear that Laurent Fignon has not been able to do that today.
Well, Phil, I think there's still a fair way to go here, and it's not far off Greg LeMond's time, and we're not far off Pedro Delgado's time, 1:11.19. I think that was the 800 metres to go banner. Laurent Fignon looks like he's going to concede well over a minute to Pedro Delgado, and probably the same to Greg LeMond, so we're going to see the American back in yellow again tonight.
Well, that is a tremendous result for Greg LeMond if that's the case. And Delgado, of course, has continued his relentless progress towards the yellow jersey, which has seemed such a long way away from him these last couple of weeks, and now all of a sudden is literally just around the corner. But one thing is now certain, Laurent Fignon is definitely losing the lead. At 1:11.53, he's finishing way outside. He's slower than Sean Kelly now, and he's still a long way up to the line. He's gone outside the time of Raul Alcala and Gerd Turnisse. By the time he gets through to 1:12.19, he'll be outside the time of Laurent Biondi, the early leader today, and a rider really that Fignon should have beaten wholesaledly. Biondi's time was 1:12.19. That's it, it's gone. So Laurent Fignon losing ground rapidly here as he tries to salvage a couple of seconds on the line. 10th place, 1:12.26 for Laurent Fignon. He gets a round of applause, but not the cheers we would have expected, because quite honestly, 10th place is not good enough now. Laurent Fignon has lost his lead in the Tour de France. It's gone back. The pendulum swings again in the direction of the American Greg LeMond. That in itself, something of a surprise. But the hot news tonight, Pedro Delgado is back. And there is the result of the final individual time trial on the mountain today. Stephen Rooks, 1:10.42. Larreta in second place at 24 seconds. Indurain third. Pedro Delgado gets fourth, and Greg LeMond is fifth, 57 seconds down on the winner.
Yeah, what a great ride by LeMond. We thought his tour was over a couple of days ago. That's plainly not the case. We'll work out the overall classification while you're away from us here.